Adolf Hitler, the evil tyrant hell-bent on genocide and racial purity. But did you know that he and his men were practitioners of the occult? That's right. Cosmic power for warfare, mystical artifacts, and communication with evil spirits were all a part of the Nazi regime. And today, I'm going to be explaining all of it. That's right, I'm going to be going through every link and connection that the Nazis had with the dark arts, with witchcraft, with the occult, everything from trying to find the Holy Grail to using remote viewing to destroy ships, to the map that the KGB had to enter into the hollow earth in Antarctica, to trying to discover the lost Aryans that existed on Atlantis. I mean, this episode has absolutely everything. Did it work? Were the occult practices of the Nazis successful? I mean, they lost the war, so probably not. But was there anything that they discovered? Was there any of their practices that led them to being a massive superpower in Western Europe during World War II? I guess we'll find out shortly. So, sit back, light up, and welcome to camp. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to camp. This is Tent Talks. Yes, this is the show where I explain the most fascinating, controversial, and interesting stories from around the world to my dumbest friends. And today, as you can see, I have no dumb friends. No, you guys have scared away my dear friend Miles, one of my closest buddies. Everyone's been shitting on him in the comments, and that makes me happy. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you guys so much. But today, it's just you and I. That's right, and my dear friend Christos, who'll be in the woods for the duration of our conversation. This is a fascinating topic. This is something that's been really interesting to me. And, you know, it's October. It's kind of getting close to Halloween time. So I thought, what better topic to bring to the loyal campers of this show than Nazism and the occult? Yes. I mean, this is a fascinating thing. You've seen it in media all over the place. I mean, like Indiana Jones, Hellboy, Captain America, like, you see these stories of Nazis dabbling with the occult and esoteric knowledge and trying to uncover ancient secrets and trying to get ancient artifacts. And anytime I saw these things, I never really saw them. I don't watch movies that much. But if I had seen or read about something like, oh, Indiana Jones, they're trying to get the, Ark of the Covenant, I'd be like, oh, maybe that's, BS. Maybe it's not true. Turns out, not only is it very true that the Nazis were well on their way to uncovering the secrets of the universe, trying to find all the lost artifacts, but it also shaped a lot of the ideology and the early beliefs of Nazi members, Heinrich Himmler, and even Adolf Hitler himself. So, strap in and let's begin, shall we? The Nazis' obsession with the occult is, obviously something that is controversial. And I think it's clear to say that it absolutely affected the Nazi beliefs early on in, as the nascent Nazi party was actually starting. The blend of like mysticism, ancient symbolism, pseudo-religious philosophy portrayed the Nazis as sort of like inheritors of this powerful, mystical Aryan heritage. And it wasn't used merely as a tool to gain support, but it was also used to reinforce the sense of German superiority and legitimacy around Hitler's regime. And I actually have an interesting quote here from a close friend and mentor of Hitler's that kind of explains all of this better than I could. It absolutely was involved, but not in the way that I think a lot of people think. So one of the Nazis' chief ideologists, this guy Alfred Rosenberg, who we'll talk about a little bit later, he says this: the success of National Socialism, the unique appearance of the Führer, has no precedent in German history. The consequence is that many Germans, due to their proclivity for the romantic and the mystical, indeed the occult, came to understand the success of National Socialism in this fashion. Basically saying himself like, hey, occultism was very, very useful in getting us where we wanted to go and solidifying our ideology amongst, ostensibly a good German populace. So let's go all the way back to the end of like the 1800s. And the only way really to understand this for me was to kind of understand the nature of Germany at this time. So a couple things. One, I think tying in and understanding how occultism affected the Nazis and the Nazi ideology is the thing that makes Nazism make sense to me. I'm like, where do these ideas of Aryanism and why do they think that there's some master race and why do they have to purge the world of lesser races or what other, racist bullshit they were talking about? Where does this come from? And we'll discover. Basically, around the late 1800s, and early 1900s, there is this movement, this like revival of occultism and mystery teachings that are spreading across Europe and America, and established Christianity within the United States specifically, but also in Western Europe was experiencing challenges, due to like urbanization and industrialization and the growing understanding of evolutionary theory and a lot of other discoveries that were really challenging the foothold that Christianity had on a lot of people. So these ideas of occultism and mystical religions and sort of cherry-picking ideas from a bunch of different religions became really, really popular. So in the late 1800s, there's a Russian woman named Helena Blavatsky. Yes, this lady right here. She's a real bombshell, this one. She founds what's known as the Theosophical Society. So this girl, Helena, she was like a spiritualist who went to Tibet and basically learned the secrets of the occult and uncovered the keys to the universe or something. And she believed that there were masters that understood ancient wisdom that were around the world who still possessed all the knowledge that could be ascertained on Earth. And that she claimed in Tibet while she was there, she was taught an ancient unknown language known as Senzar. And this was basically able to translate a bunch of ancient texts. And she also claimed while she was there that Tibetan monks helped her sort of control her psychic abilities and her telepathic abilities and her ability to control people against their will. Among these abilities, she describes clairvoyance, telepathy, and sort of putting herself in other people's consciousness, dematerializing and rematerializing physical objects, like literally making shit like disappear, and also projecting her astral body. Therefore, she's able to be in two places at once. So again, when I mention occult and sort of these types of ideas, I'm talking about those sorts of beliefs in general, like the idea that someone could do that. Is it possible? I mean, maybe. Did she do it? I don't know. What's up, guys? We're gonna take a break really quick because I'm coming on the road. That's right. Pottstown, PA, Friday, November 8th, 2024. I'll be at Soul Joel's. You can come see me do 1 hour of stand-up comedy, nothing more and nothing less. It's gonna be an amazing time. And if you're not near Pottstown, don't worry, because I'm coming to Stamford, Connecticut. I'm going to New York Comedy Club. That's right. They have a bunch of amazing clubs in the city and also an amazing one in Stamford, Connecticut, November 13th. If you want to come hang out, come hang with me, say what's up. I'll be talking to everybody after the show. We'll be doing an hour of comedy, guys. Stand-up comedy. It's my passion. It's what I love to do when I'm not inside this tent. So come kick it with me. Bunch of crazy stories. We'll have a great time. You can find the link at my Instagram. Get it in the story. I'll put it in the description. I can't wait to see you guys there. Let's get back to the show. Hey guys, really quick. Did you know that on this day in history in 1582, Pope Gregory introduced the Gregorian calendar, which most of the world still uses today? Or that in 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite, into orbit. This event triggered the space race between the USA and the USSR. I learned these facts pretty recently, actually, on the S'more Camp newsletter. That's right, S'more Camp, the inner sanctum. For this kind of show, we do a ton of research. I have different researchers and friends that help me find information, and not everything can make the episode. Either it's like too crazy, it's too like weird or gory, and it will get demonetized on YouTube, or it's just additional and it doesn't always make it, but it always makes it into the S'more Camp Inner Sanctum newsletter. So if you are interested in expanding your mind, learning new information, and being the most interesting person into every room you step into, check it out in the description or this QR code right here. Now let's get back to the show. Regardless, she creates a society which, again, draws on a bunch of different sources like Gnosticism, Hinduism, Buddhism, some like Western, like esoteric traditions, like alchemy, and even going into like Jewish Kabbalah. And she basically uses these ideas to further her practice. The Theosophical Society is basically an organization of people that are interested in these ideas and trying to ascertain this power, that have all kind of come together to read her teachings and read her, books, and basically try to uncover these ancient abilities. Also, a sidebar for the time, I think it's worth noting that there was a link, specifically in Western Europe, between the new front of modern science, and a lot of Nazis specifically much later kind of admit that they saw this as like a Jewish practice, that there was a lot of famous scientists like Albert Einstein, Niels Bohr, and a bunch of others who basically led the way in understanding the forefront of what we know to be as modern science. And occult sciences was not confined to one strict discipline. It was a border science. They could kind of go all over and go into, like religion, and go into theology and philosophy and physics, and tie in a bunch of things all together. So at the time, it was really, really attractive to people that had racist beliefs. So again, they saw these sort of occult ideas as a way to tap into the proper Aryan form of science. And I don't think it's possible to really mention how all of this comes to be without understanding the nature of Germany around the turn of the century, around the 1900s. Originally, Germans were feeling very nationalistic. Everything was great. And then World War I happens. The Kaiser falls, and Germans are confused and embarrassed and just humiliated. And they're left sort of looking for someone to bring them up from the ashes, just a savior to, save the day and fix everything and restore Germany to its prior power. Thus, we get Hitler. So, young Adolf was maybe first introduced to the ideas of occult teachings around maybe like 6 or 7 years before World War I actually breaks out. At this time, he's living in a hostel for homeless people in Vienna, and he meets a fellow resident at the hospital, this guy, Joseph Greiner. Now, let me just say, this comes from Greiner's account, so a lot of people dispute that this actually happened the way that he says, but regardless, this is how he sort of explains it. Joseph was a believer in magic, not only like fucking card tricks and, Chris Angel shit, but he also believed that like he could conjure up things and do magical abilities and have these magical acts like telepathy and, bilocation and things like that we had mentioned before. And he even demonstrated how he could use his mind to manipulate people and events. We might call this like, hypnotism or something like that. But for Hitler, this was everything. He was like, oh my God, I can control people. I can take over someone else's body. And to him, it's according to Greiner's account, it was very intoxicating. He was very much into these ideas. And by then, he had already been exposed to sort of racial supremacist ideas and what it means to be a proper, true Aryan. So he gets these ideas about the occult mixed with his racial ideas, and the philosophies kind of mend together in a way. So some people say that Hitler at this time was kind of getting involved in hypnotism and numerology and astrology and sort of niche skills like graphology, which basically is, trying to like use handwriting to undercover something about someone else. By like seeing how someone writes, you're able to figure out if they're gay or so. I don't know. I don't know exactly what it was for, but this is allegedly what he was doing at the time, sort of as a young artist in Vienna. Greiner goes on to claim a lot of things about Hitler, which, have been disputed. But regardless, he maintains that he was one of the early people to expose himself to this idea. And Hitler more or less confirms it in some ways. So I'll explain. Basically, much later, Hitler, in sort of contemplating how best to manipulate people and the masses, apparently read a parapsychology tome called Magic. That's the name of it. Not The Gathering. It's not a game. This is a real book that some guy wrote called Magic, in which he underlined sentences in the book. And these are the sentences that he underlined. Satan is the fertilizing, destroying, constructing warrior. And he also underlined, he who does not carry demonic seeds within him will never give birth to a new world. So people looked at this book that Hitler possessed that had these underlinings and kind of deduced like, wait, was this guy satanic? Was he, even deeper into the occult than people really realized? And a lot of people thought that he was possessed, the Catholic Church specifically. I'll explain that a little bit later. But one of the main people that's documented that Hitler got acquainted with is this guy Adolf Lanz, aka Georg Lanz von Lubenfels. I'm going to use his real name, Adolf Lanz, because the fake name came as a way for him to like do racist shit. He basically forms a secret society. I'll explain. Basically, in 1909, Hitler's like 20 years old, right? He's just a young artist kind of doing his thing. And he meets this guy, Adolf Lanz, and this guy sucks, for lack of a better word. I mean, this guy's a proper scumbag, okay? And it hurts me to say this. He was actually a Catholic monk for a long time. He started as a Catholic monk, but then later left the church after he was convinced that the Catholic Church had been suppressing true Christian teaching. So at the core of what he believed the true teaching that was being suppressed was a racial struggle. Yeah. So therefore, he basically started his own religion in a way. He starts this order that is basically beginning a new crusade against the lower races that had been interrupted for centuries. And he's not the only one that did this. There was a bunch of other people that were involved in sort of mainstream Christian belief that kind of stepped away. I mean, the majority of the Nazi party basically disavowed Christianity in any form, a lot of them because they believed that it was a Semitic religion, that it came from a Jew. So how could it be any good? And the idea that a Jew could be worshipped seemed sort of antithetical to the Nazi Aryan ideas, obviously, right? Fucking, yeah. So basically they disavowed it, and a lot of them moved away from Christianity. So this guy, Adolf Lanz, right? Basically, he founds this occult group. It's called the Order of the New Templars. And here's the flag of the organization. Look, I mean, Does it look familiar to you guys? I mean, it looks kind of like Hitler stole some shit from him. I mean, the golden background symbolizes eternity, and the lilies are racial purity. And then the red swastika is supposed to represent this rising Aryan hero, a messiah. And he starts this group kind of based off of the Knights Templar, which is an offshoot of effectively like a Roman crusade force that was going to like protect people, but also like, you know, kill people of other religions, specifically Muslims. Sorry, Muzzies. And basically that was what the Crusades were about. And for whatever reason, a lot of these Nazi guys were fascinated by these ideas of the Knights Templar and the Teutons, who we'll talk about in a little bit. The order of the New Templar was weird and kind of fucked up, for lack of a better word. They had strict racial entry requirements. Basically, all the people that were entering had to have blonde hair, blue eyes, large heads, small hands, small feet. Sounds kind of hot, actually, when I say it that way. I mean, hold on. I was thinking of a guy. Anyway, so this obviously is a very Aryan idea, and a lot of people think this is where, you know, Hitler, a lot of Nazi, you know, high-ranking, high brass got the idea for, you know, their Aryan race. And again, these ideas went through social clubs across Austria and Germany, basically pushing this idea of racial supremacy, this blonde hair, blue-eyed type person. And there's more to that and where that comes from. I'll explain. There was even rules about who they could marry. Members had to swear that they would only marry racially pure women to ensure that the bloodlines would remain untarnished by the lesser races. I mean, this guy was such a fucking idiot. In 1905, he writes a book. Again, this is Adolf Lanz, right? He writes a book in which he advocates sterilizing the sick. I mean, just like straight up eugenics, and the lower races, as well as forced labor for the castrated chandels. Glorified the Aryan race, the Gottmensch, basically the godmen. And this guy, Lanz, he justified his esoteric racial ideology by attempting to give a biblical foundation who, according to Eve, she was in the garden and she was basically divine, and then she gets herself involved with a demon and then gives birth to the lower races, and in the process basically like destroys humanity. And this is, according to him, in his writings, he claims this led blonde women to being attracted to primarily dark men. So, I mean, this is like, it's basically just fan fiction. Like, it's like these guys are nerds. Like, they're basically like LARPing and like cosplaying, but it's more fucked up because then someone like Hitler comes around and hears all this shit. He's like, oh, that's a good idea. That is why they like dark men. It's not their abs. It's not that they can dunk. No, it's because Eve was banging a demon or something. All right. So basically he goes on to say that we need to, you know, stop the dark-skinned beastmen from, you know, taking over the world, yada, yada, yada. And basically he gets some attention. I mean, he's actually like fairly popular at this time across a lot of, you know, Europe and these sort of high societies. He basically creates a magazine called Astral, where he reads all of this racist bullshit. And readers of this magazine actually include Dietrich Eckart, who is Hitler's like #1 mentor. Like Hitler loved this guy, and Adolf Hitler himself. Lanz actually claims that Hitler visited him in 1909, and Lanz gave him 2 issues of the magazine and paid for his taxi home, and they had some sort of a friendship or relationship afterwards. And the story with Lanz and Hitler actually is very interesting. So Lanz, again, I'm assuming this guy's just like an incel. Like he also preaches nudism. That's like a part of his thing. And that's a part of the belief that the original Aryans were always nude so that they could easily sort of liaise with Aryan women. The guy, maybe this is the Catholics' problem. Maybe this is their fault. That they made this guy a priest for like 10 years. And he was like, God, then why are they banging all the black guys? Like he just couldn't handle it. He's like, we're supposed to be naked and banging hot white chicks. Like, this is literally like his whole philosophy. So, like, and he even takes the Bible. This is fucked up, in my opinion. He takes the Bible and, like, warps it to basically fit his own racist shit. So he takes this verse and he turns into this. Love thy neighbor as thyself, if he is a member of your own race. I mean, that's not even creative. Like, he just takes a Bible verse and then just makes it racist. Like, that's not that hard. For God so loved the world, he gave him his one and only son. For white people. Like, that's, you know what I mean? Like, that's fucking, it's not even creative. And even funnier than all this, Adolf Lanz's mother is believed to have been Jewish, so he fails his own criteria. Regardless, beyond Adolf Lanz's teachings of white supremacy, he also talked about the arrival of a savior, and this is important. The Aryan hero is on this planet, the most complete incarnation of God in the spirit. And it will come as no surprise that Hitler viewed himself as the Messiah that Lanz talked about. Basically, after Hitler's rise to prominence, this is maybe my favorite part of the whole thing. In like the 1920s, Lanz tries to be recognized as like the guy that taught Hitler everything. Like this is like the 1920s, like Germany's taken off, like they're doing the Olympics in, you know, Munich, everything's going good. And Lanz is like, bro, I'm your OG. I gave you everything. I put you on game. Like what's good? And Hitler refuses to acknowledge him. So Lanz actually even writes in one of the issues of his magazine, "One shall remember that the swastika and fascist movements are basically offspring of the Astara." he's like, yo, I did fascism. Like it's like it's so embarrassing that he's like, what? Come on, dude, I'm the guy that started fascism. And Hitler doesn't acknowledge him at all. Hitler's basically just, doesn't even pay Lanz any attention. He kind of like distances the fact that he ever like met him. So again, it's kind of difficult to ascertain exactly what did happen because Hitler doesn't ever really corroborate the story. But after Austria is annexed by Nazi Germany in 1938, Lanz hoped for Hitler's patronage, and Hitler basically bans him from publishing his writings. Yeah, he basically says, hey, your magazine, your little, you know, racist magazine I used to read when I was a kid, no more, out of here. And after the war, Lanz accuses Hitler of not only stealing and corrupting his idea, but also of being inferior racial stock, which is just like, all right, like you just call everyone racist and then someone steals your racist ideas and you're like, oh, but he's also inferior. It's like, bro, I don't know who's worse, like Hitler for not even coming up with his own racism. You know what I mean? Like he didn't even invent it. Like he just stole it from someone else. Or the guy that's trying to be like a Nazi hipster who's like, oh, I was doing supremacy before. Anyway, I'm like the OG. He's in like a coffee shop. He's like, yeah, dude, I like started all this like Nazi shit. It's insane. I think the guy ends up like living all the way through and ends up dying in like the 50s. Like he sees the whole rise and fall and nothing ever happens. What's up, guys? We're going to take a break really quick because I need to tell you how to get your health in control, okay? With this thing right here. It's called Whoop. I love it. I didn't think I was going to be a big Whoop guy. I tried it out like a year ago and I haven't taken it off since. I got a bunch of different bands and I really enjoy it. All right. Right now I'm doing Sober October. I'm off the booze. I'm off the K, off the Fent, everything. I just caffeine and nicotine. That's all I've been up to. But there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? Just no alcohol, because alcohol is the thing that messes your sleep up the most. And caffeine after 2 p.m. That's just my personal thing. I'll be honest. I have a kid. I should not be getting this much sleep, but because I'm doing Sober October, I've been sleeping unbelievably well. Last night, I got 81% recovery with a newborn. Night before that, 74% recovery with a newborn. Night before that, 20%. Whatever, all right? All I'm saying is if you're interested in getting control of your health, you're going to go to join.whoop.com/camp, all right? C-A-M-P. That's where you're going to find me. I'm actually going to try to make a community. I don't know if this is even possible. I'm saying this without even really knowing the details. I'm going to make a community. So if you are a listener to this program and you get a Whoop or you already have a Whoop, you can join me in our community. We can track our sleep together. We're basically sleeping together if you want to think about it that way. All right. Every night, you and I snuggled up, cozy next to the campfire. So listeners of this show, you're going to get 1 month free when you join with the promo code CAMP. Check it out. join.whoop.com/camp. Let's get back to the show. What's up, guys? We're going to take a break really quick because as you can see, there's a lot of nice hair on this program. And if you're interested in taking better care of your hair, you can check out MD Hair. MD Hair is an amazing service that delivers high quality products right to your door. And with MD Hair, they're going to be able to assess you and give you a customized package directly to your door for exactly what you need. With that first order, you're going to be getting customized hair wellness supplements, a customized treatment shampoo, and then a customized treatment serum. I'm telling you, this is one of the nicest hair products you can get. It comes in a beautiful package, and tons of people have been using it to get stronger hair, healthier hair, and even regrow their hair that they've lost. It's great. They use AI in all of their services to make sure what you're getting is exactly what you need. When you sign up with MD Hair, what you're going to do is send them a picture of your scalp. They're going to use AI and some of their experts in their team. They're going to analyze your head. They're going to see where you need help. Maybe it's a little dry, maybe it's a little greasy, maybe you have a receding hairline, maybe you're losing it from the back, all right? And if you're interested in getting better scalp health, if you want to get supplements that are gonna make your hair stronger, look better, be more full, and even thicker, I want you to go to the link in the description right now, go to MD Hair, and I want you to use the promo code CAMPG70. That's CAMPG70, and you will get 70% off your first month. That's right, a customized package right to your door, 70% off your first month. Well, let's get back to the show. So, basically, Lanz is writing about all this stuff. There's another guy, Guido von List. That's his real name. He sells meatballs on in Bay Ridge. No, he's Guido von List. Obviously, he's part of Jersey Shore, and he basically invents gym tan and laundry. No, Guido von List is one of the main writers that's with Lanz that's also discussing these fucked up racist ideas, and the two of them kind of form like a hybrid with this sort of theosophical idea that Russian lady that I was talking about, Helena. Basically, I'll put it this way. Theosophy was just the interest in the occult and trying to use ancient texts to ascertain power, but it didn't necessarily have like a racialized element. To the contrary, a lot of the theosophical ideas were about like unity and that all human beings were a part of one sacred body. And this was not good, obviously, for these racist guys. So they sort of take these theosophical occult ideas and tie it in with racial ideologies and create something known as Ariosophy. Ariosophy also obviously coming from the root word Aryan. And it's basically like, you know, these occult ideas mixed in with racial supremacy. And literally the name Ariosophy means wisdom of the Aryans. And this was one of the main ideas of these people. They could channel the wisdom of the Aryans by using these occult ideas to tap in with the Aryans. Now, this leads me to my main question. What is an Aryan? Like I know it's blonde hair, blue eyes, but like, where does that even come from? And it's even weirder because like, I'll talk to like my Indian friends and they're like, oh yeah, you know, the Aryans, like they're over in, you know, like Iran, Persia, India. I'm like, that's not Aryan. Aryan is blonde hair, blue eyes. So I did not understand this at all. And basically this is where it comes from. Aryan originally referred to an ancient group of people who spoke like this Indo-Iranian language, like this Indo-Persian dialect. And they lived in parts of like, you know, India, Iran, Central Asia. And it comes from the Sanskrit word Arya, meaning noble or honorable, probably where the Game of Thrones people got Arya from, I don't know. And it's found in ancient texts of Hinduism's all over. The Rig Veda is a Hindu text that talks about what it means to be Arya or Aryan. And in the 19th and 20th centuries, the meaning of Aryan gets distorted by these sort of European scholars and linguists and ideologues that detach it from its original context. So this is basically what happens. In the 19th century, European linguists discovered that the languages spoken from India to Europe, that's everything from like Sanskrit, Latin, Greek, Germanic languages, they all share a common root, like an ancient root language. And they theorized that the existence of this prehistoric people that spoke this Proto-Indo-European language was basically the ancestor of all language and of all people. And these scholars refer to this hypothetical ancient group as the Aryans, right? I mean, it's sort of like this Aryan dialect that kind of predated everything and is, again, based on the European term. So some of these scholars and these thinkers, particularly in Germany, they began claiming that the Indo-European Aryans was not just a linguistic group, but also a racial group, and that they associated these ancient Aryans not with the Indo-Iranian Persian guys that were dark-skinned. They associated them with Northern European and Germanic people. That's right. So basically, this was a part of a broader effort to trace European civilization to noble, superior Nordic race. And that's kind of what they did. And again, they're trying to make this tie that the Germanic people are actually Norse and that they're truly Vikings. They have an unbroken bloodstream that is completely pure. And that is the utmost person, the Übermensch. And so it's, again, during this 19th century time that these racial theories are becoming popular in Europe. And some of these intellectuals started associating the term Aryan with this master race. Again, defined as blonde hair, blue eyes, and typically of Nordic or Germanic descent. And the racial interpretation was not based on literally anything, like at all. Like, again, like most people kind of recognize like all civilizations started in Africa and then we moved north, skin color gets lighter. It's just geography. Race is sort of this invented idea, but Hitler was like, no. And not only Hitler, a lot of people at the time, for the record, were like, no. It's actually the supreme beings, this master race was coming from the north. They're actually basically Viking coming from Scandinavia, and they came down and brought this, pure blood, and it's getting tainted with the blood of other people, which is why you can't intermarry, yada, 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 a bunch of racist bullshit. It goes even farther than that, by the way. Basically, like now, because they believe this master race, this Aryan idea, they start tying in like Norse mythology. And like I said, Guido von List and Adolf Lanz, they start to associate this idea with Ariosophy, and then it becomes this basically like a belief, like a philosophy in its own right. And so in the early 20th century, These radicalized ideas of the Aryan race become central to the Nazi ideology. The Nazis glorify the Nordic race as the purest, most superior form of the Aryans. They promote the idea of Nordic Aryan lineage. And this concept is used to basically justify the Nazi belief in racial superiority and all of their genocides that happen thereafter. It goes even farther than this, and I'll explain in a second, but some of them believe that they're not necessarily even Norse. Some of them believe that they're from Atlantis. Yeah, they believe that the true proper Aryans are from a land that doesn't exist anymore. Some actually believe that they exist subterraneanly. Like some people believe in this hollow earth theory. Some of these Nazis at this time were like, the true Aryans are actually under our feet, and there's a way that we can communicate with them through using these occult practices, which is, again, where you get these ideas of Ariosophy, which, you know, as we can see, have become very prevalent. It's also worth noting here that the idea of the swastika that's being used that I had talked about a little bit before, this has been a symbol that's existed in, you know, Indian culture and, you know, a lot of East Asian cultures for the longest time. I mean, some have even traced back like the first use of the swastika like 15,000 years, like way, way beyond even agriculture. And for the longest time, it was seen almost as like a talisman of like good luck and, you know, good fortune. And even before the straight up World War II, like some of these World War I soldiers were wearing swastikas on their uniform as almost like a symbol of good luck going into war. And so it was around at the time, and a lot of different people had different theories as to where Hitler got it from. One of them was from, obviously, Adolf Lanz and his New Templar Society. Another theory is that in the 20s, Hitler met up with this guy, Alfred Schuller. And Schuller, again, is another one of these guys that believes in Aryan supremacy, but also in the occult. And he's the writer that's giving lectures across Europe about the Roman Empire and how the Jews and the Christians were responsible for its downfall and how the Aryans need to take it back, yada, yada, yada. He also did seances and healing rituals. And one of his more potential notable influences is that he was one of the people that adopted the swastika as a personal symbol. And it kind of, to him, symbolized almost like the cross, that this was going to be the Messiah of the Aryans. And it's much like Adolf Lanz, this is then used on Nazi propaganda everywhere. So there's a couple other influences on Hitler specifically that really kind of pull him in this direction. So there are these three guys, Eckhart, Fader, and Rosenberg. Okay, and these are some of the biggest influences on Hitler as sort of a young man, and then even well into his career as the head of the Nazi Party. Basically, all these men carried some sort of belief about, you know, the occult and spiritual development. And by far, the most influential were, you know, these three that we talked about. So Gottfried Feder, he's an economist whose ideas significantly shape Hitler's future economic policies. I mean, he's one of these guys that's like, we got to, you know, break the interest slavery. And he believes that there's a large international finance and extortion scheme that's being done by Jewish financiers and that we need to take it out. And this was his idea that Hitler ultimately kind of took on. Dietrich Eckhart was a playwright and a key mentor to Hitler. I mean, Hitler loved this guy so much that at the end of Mein Kampf, there's actually a dedication to Eckhart. He's like, this guy's the best. And he's basically been described as like the spiritual father of Hitler. And I think to understand Hitler, you kind of got to understand Eckhart. He's introduced to Hitler and basically espouses a lot of these ideas that would become central to the Nazi ideology, anti-Semitism, etc. And some believe that he was actually even the one that introduced Hitler to this clairvoyant, this guy, Erich Jan Honessen. And basically he says that this guy ultimately is one of the main people that helped Hitler use occult practices for his speeches. It is an interesting idea. I had never really heard this before, but basically you'll see like these pictures of Hitler practicing his speeches and it looks so silly. I mean, it's hilarious. And this guy, Erich Jan, how do you even pronounce this? Hanussen. Let's go with Hanussen. He was like a clairvoyant and like an occultist and a magician, and he was helping sort of mentor Hitler during his speeches and basically using occult techniques of mind control for crowd domination. This is what some people have theorized. Other people dispute that they had ever actually even seen each other. And this last person we'll talk about is Alfred Rosenberg. He's one of the principal ideologists of the Nazi Party, right? This is the guy whose quote we read at the beginning that was basically like, hey, occultism is the only way that we made this shit work. He wrote a book and basically laid out a bunch of racial theories that became central to the Nazi ideology, including the superiority of the Aryan race. And, you know, these guys, all of them are just super racist. He's a very popular writer at the time of, you know, Nazi Germany, and his book is super popular, second only to one, Harry Potter. No, Mein Kampf. And all of these men are basically, fraternizing with these ideas of Aryanism and racial supremacy that, again, are informed by a lot of these occult societies. And one of them that I think is probably the most predominant that always needs to get brought up when talking about Hitler and the occult is a society known as the Tool Society. And now this one is hilarious. And these guys were tools. The Tool Society is basically an esoteric group which was formed in Germany in 1918. And this is the same year that World War I ends. And I don't think that's by coincidence. Again, this is a society of young German people that are like, we need to take back our country. And they found the society on, not only nationalistic ideas, but also super racist ideas, as you can imagine. It's best described and understood as like the Germans' equivalent of like the Freemasons. It's sort of secretive, and their premise is the belief that there is mystical knowledge and that only some people can know about all the information. And if to get in, it was like super, super strict. You had to be a perfect Aryan, and even just to get into the society. And just like the Freemasons, the Tool Society believed in teachings and rituals, and they largely centered around mysticism, the occult, and symbolism. And it's funny because Toul itself is the name of a mythical country referred to in the ancient Greek literature. And members of the society believed that this was a place, that there actually was a place known as Toul, where the Aryans are said to be from. Again, some people said they were from Atlantis, other people said they were from Toul. And this whole society was basically, presenting on behalf of the Toul people, the true Aryans that exist somewhere in a land that got destroyed in a giant cataclysm or something. Again, even within the organization, some Toul members were suggesting that Atlantis is Toul, or Hyperborea, that's Toul, or that maybe it exists inside Earth in some type of hollow Earth thing. Basically, it's a clubhouse for guys to like LARP about Germany's ancient past and how they were the greatest descendants of the greatest people, and that, at the end of World War I, they're all embarrassed and they feel ashamed, and they have, these austerity measures, and the German economy's in the toilet and everything sucks. And they're like, guys, we're actually we're the purest bloodline, and we need to protect our bloodline. And we're basically Norse gods like Thor or Odin or something. And again, this is a lot of where you get these Hollywood things, Captain America, Marvel, that's on you guys. Just saying, this is where they get these ideas from, that the Nazi ideology was so influenced by these Norse ideas from a lost land or of Atlantis. And many even began to believe the ideas of the world ice theory. Now, this is a crazy theory. I can't even get into all of it, but basically it postulates that there was a land that existed, that there was a supreme race of people that were in the land, and that through a bunch of ice blocks in space colliding together, it destroyed it and sunk the land and created Earth, and that's where the true Aryan people are from. Again, this idea of Toul, it's not out of nothing. This is like from a Greco-Roman geographer. And the Latin term Ultima Thule is, again, mentioned by this Roman poet Virgil. And in his poems, he talks about this land. And a lot of people just assume that Toul probably refers to Scandinavia, although Virgil simply uses it as like a proverbial expression for the edge of the known world. And his mention, in my opinion, shouldn't really be taken as a substantial reference to Scandinavia. I think he's maybe just using it metaphorically, but regardless, it doesn't matter what I think. The Nazis at the time were like, no, this is where we're from. These are where our people are from. And, a lot of people maybe speculated it was Greenland, Iceland. Regardless, their obsession with supremacy did not just lie in the geography, but also in the hierarchy. Again, these Aryans in the Toul Society, they believed in the idea of inbreeding and how you could never do it. And under Nazi rule, this belief became the viewpoint, and it was preached in the Toul Society. Now, there were several key members in the Nazi movement that were involved, or even members of the Toul Society. I mean, Rudolf Hess, who is basically Hitler's number two, he's Hitler's deputy, and he's a prominent member in the Toul Society. Alfred Rosenberg, the guy who I mentioned before, he later heads the Reich Ministry for the occupied Eastern Territories, and Dietrich Eckart were also associated with the society. So this timeline here is important. Within weeks of Germany's defeat in World War I, in November of that same year, the Toul Society is created, and two of the members from the Toul Society, this guy Anton Drexler and Karl Harrier, they create the German Workers' Party, the DAP. And on the 12th of September, 1919, Hitler attends a talk for the German Workers' Party, and the theme of the night was the evils of capitalism and how the Jews are taking over the world or something. And so after the dinner kind of goes on, Hitler stands up and gives this rousing objection in typical Hitler fashion, and maybe using some of these performance techniques that he had learned from these playwrights or these magicians. He's able to basically tell these people exactly what they want to hear. All the people in this sort of secret meeting of this German Worker Society, and basically tells them that they need to take back Germany and that he's the person to do it. So he effectively takes over the whole organization. The party changes its name from the German Workers' Party to the National Socialist German Workers' Party. And therefore, we get National Socialists, the Nazis. And Hitler is their leader. And by then, his fledgling views on Aryan supremacy have been fully radicalized by these three guys, Feder, Eckhart, and Rosenberg. And central to all these beliefs is this supernatural ability that was once held by the Aryans that maybe they can then possess once more to take over the world. I know it sounds crazy, but this is really a part of it. Now, there's a part of this that I want to talk about because the existence of the Tool Society is well documented by historians, and you can read about it, and there's been plenty of books that have been written about this, but there's a lesser-known society that some people believe heavily influenced a lot of members and Hitler himself of the Nazi Party, and that's known as the Vril Society. The Vril Society is interesting. They held a lot of similar beliefs as the Tool Society, except they believed that semi-divine beings lived in secret caverns underneath the surface of the earth. This is what I was talking about. The Aryans that are, beneath the earth in some capacity. The Vril Ya were the Aryan descendants and these superior beings to all the other races that were destined to rule over the weak. And it was the responsibility of these Vril members to liberate mankind and to spread the Aryan race worldwide. The Vril Ya also believed in the basis of all power being Vril, which is kind of similar to like the Chinese understanding of like Qi, or like Hindu, like prana. Like this is like this idea that it is like the highest energy force and that it can be channeled through seances, and that certain masters could connect with these subterranean beings and, get wisdom and knowledge in order to conquer their enemies. And this was a part of the Vril ideology. Now, a lot of people dispute that Hitler ever had contact with these people, or furthermore, that the organization ever existed. I mean, that's the problem with secret societies, is that if they're good at their job, you never hear about them. So it's somewhat disputed, but some people do speculate that Hitler was sort of enticed by these Vril ideas and believed that he could maybe communicate with the Norse Aryans that live subterraneanly in caverns and try to liberate the world through spreading the proper blood. I don't know. It seems crazy to me, but it's possible. Regardless, once Hitler aligned himself with the Tool Society members and kind of formed this National Socialist Party, the seeds of his belief and his racist ideologies of genocide had basically already taken root, right? Like, all you needed to do was convince the German public that their salvation lay in the revival of Aryan supremacy. So at the time that Hitler rose to power, the Germans, like I said, were disillusioned by the economic hardship and the humiliation of World War I, and they were looking for a messiah. They were looking for a savior. And Hitler was like, I'm your guy. He saw the opportunity to give the German people what they wanted. And, there were many ways to symbolize this messiah, and integrating the belief system of the people at the time of Christianity and kind of imbuing it with German nationalism and sort of these Aryan ideals, he was ultimately able to take hold of the general public. What's up, guys? We're going to take a break really quick because it's 2024. And it's time to talk about something important. When you are seriously hurt, your injury could be worth millions. Yes, that's right. The world is a crazy place, and one person's negligence can result in another's settlement. And that's why I got to talk to you about Morgan & Morgan. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and over 1,000 lawyers. Yes, these are the big boys. You know them, you see their billboards all over the world. If you ever drove down I-90 from Florida to New York, I'm telling you, you've seen the billboards, all right? Have you ever watched a UFC fight? You've seen them right on the banner. I'm telling you, these are the biggest guys in the game, all right? With over $20 billion recovered for over 500,000 clients, Morgan & Morgan has a proven track record of fighting to get you full and fair compensation. The annoying thing with most attorneys is that in order to submit a claim, you got to call them up, you got to talk to their people, you got to go back and forth on emails, you got to hope that they see it. They might charge you just to even look at their claim. Here's the cool thing with Morgan & Morgan. With 8 clicks or less, you can submit a claim and one of their licensed attorneys will take a look at it and get back to you. It's that easy. It's like ordering something off Amazon. It's just a couple clicks. You can submit your claim very easily and cheap. Yeah, how about $0? That's how much it costs to submit a claim with Morgan & Morgan. Extremely easy, no fee required. So, if you are ever injured, you can go check out Morgan & Morgan. Their fee is free unless they win. That's right, unless they win for you. Unless they fight and get you compensation, you're not paying a single dollar. That's a pretty good deal. So, for more information, go to forthepeople.com/Gagnon. That's correct, forthepeople.com/Gagnon, or dial pound law, that's pound 529 from your cell phone. That's for the people, forthepeople.com/Gagnon, or dial pound law, pound 529 from your cell phone. This is a paid advertisement. Now let's get back to the show after this short disclaimer. Hey, what's up, guys? We're going to take a break really quick because I want to talk to you about the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Yes, we are talking about Prize Picks. This is a super fun fantasy game that will help you make some money while you're watching sports and make the games more interesting. Unless you're me, which I've lost every time. Don't. I'm not good at this game. I don't know sports. Okay. I don't know how to play, but maybe you do know how to play. And if you are interested in learning how to play, it's real easy. You just pick more or less on like 2 to 6 player stat projections. And if you guess properly, you're going to see the winnings roll right in. All right. So we're recording this on a Monday. So let me take you through my Monday night football trifecta. Derrick Henry, 86.5 rushing yards. I'm jamming more. Lamar Jackson, 231.5 passing yards. I'm crushing that more. And Zay Flowers, 64.5 receiving yards. I'm going to say more on that also. And then even better, we got the Yankees and the Dodgers in the World Series. So I'm going to go more on anything Showtime, Shohei Ohtani, and Aaron Judge. And like I said, I'm not good at this. I always lose money. So play better than me. And if you want to make these picks or even better picks, go to prizepicks.com, use the promo code CAMP, and for listeners of this show, here's how it works. You sign up using the promo code, deposit and place your first lineup, and $50 in promo funds will appear in your account instantly. That's right, when you play your first $5 lineup. You don't even need to win your lineup to receive a $50 bonus. So even if you lose like me, you can keep on playing. Prizepicks.com, check it out. Let's get back to the show. So Hitler basically had to convince all of the German public of these sort of weird occult Aryan ideals that him and a lot of other members of these weird social groups had been kind of cozying up to. So one of the ways that they did that is they used Christianity that existed obviously in Germany for thousands of years and kind of washed it away and tied it in with this idea of Aryanism. And again, like I said before, Christianity was antithetical to the Aryan beliefs. I mean, it worships a Jewish guy. It has this whole thing of forgiveness and that all people are welcome and that all people can be saved by God, yada, yada, yada. And he didn't want any of that. He was like, only one type of person can get saved, and that's the Aryans. That's the Whites. So basically what they started doing is they started manipulating the nature of religion in the country with these Nazi ideals. So like even at school, children were taught to pray to not God, but the Führer. Literally, Führer, my Führer, leader, Hitler, basically. And rather than, obviously, the Heavenly Father. Christians also celebrate, Christmas and Easter, and they kind of washed these things away and took away the religious elements of the holidays and actually just imbued it with as like a little gift-giving holiday. And they actually brought back the winter solstice, and the Christmas tree was adorned with swastikas, and it became sort of a time of just kind of giving militaristic gifts and Nazi propaganda and all of these ideas like the summer solstice and sort of these pagan festivals were all brought back, which is kind of funny because I'm pretty sure a lot of Christian festivals were built on pagan festivals. And then he brought it back to pagan festivals again, going back to this idea that Christianity was suppressing the people and that he needed to revive the true ideals of what, the religion of the Aryans was. And so, like I said, they did these winter and summer solstices, and there were these big festivals that were seen across the country and were a big part of these German holidays. So like the winter solstice, even, for example, they had these bonfires and torchlight processions. And in the summer solstice, they had, it was, again, a day to sort of honor the sun. And so you even see like a lot of symbolism within the Nazi party, like the black sun. They had these occult symbols that were tied in with the party at large. So this is where it gets interesting. Hitler has basically taken over all of Germany. The Nazi party is extremely successful. They are controlling this massive country, and they have these desires to spread east. And so shortly after Germany invades Poland in 1939, there's a woman named Magda Goebbels. You probably know her last name because she is the wife of the Minister of Propaganda, Joseph Goebbels. And basically, she stumbles upon a passage in Nostradamus' book. And basically, Nostradamus was a French occult figure that was able to see the future, and he was able to make these divine proclamations and had a bunch of, historically, a ton of different prophecies that have come true. And people at the time, specifically in Germany, were aware of him, and they had read his different quatrains. And one of the quatrains, they believed, predicted the crisis that developed in England and Poland in 1939. After bringing the passage to her husband's attention, Goebbels ordered the creation and the distribution of the brochure, and it would convince all those living not only in Germany and in Austria, but all over Europe that a Nazi victory was inevitable. Nostradamus said it was so. I mean, it was duh, right? The Allies saw this, and they were like, oh, wow, these people have kind of lost their religion. They're sort of tied up with these occult ideas. They believe that this guy is an actual prophet, and they were afraid it was going to, stoke morale within Germany. So they said, you know what? We're going to retaliate with our own psychological warfare. And they dropped large quantities of flyers over German-occupied territories, claiming that Nostradamus had actually seen Germany's defeat. They had made fake Nostradamus quatrains, and not only in an attempt to, defeat the Germans, but also boost the morale of maybe allies that had read these pamphlets or come across them. So they were basically doing the same thing. It's crazy. And in an attempt to boost American morale, MGM actually produced a series of short films about the famous soothsayer. And again, sort of promoting this idea that these occult figures were working on both sides of the war. So again, this is just another illustration of how sort of the mystical realm of, untapped knowledge is actually very much alive within the hearts of German people. And when they're told about these ideas, they kind of grab onto them. Now, I would say the most prominent figure of all German occultism is actually not Hitler. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit. But Hitler, like I said, growing up, he's reading about all these things, and he's reading Austera and these magazines that have, these sort of racist occult sort of ideas. But as he slowly progresses through the war, he gets less interested in the occult. But the same cannot be said for Heinrich Himmler. Now, Heinrich Himmler is, this guy's a scumbag, okay? Like, this guy is the worst. He's the leader of the SS, which, obviously is a paramilitary organization within the Nazi party. And this guy's he's a scumbag. But he's using a ton of different occult symbols all throughout the German propaganda, and he's giving them to Goebbels, and it's completely entwined with so much of the Nazi look and appearance at the time. Black uniforms, he believed, had a specific meaning. He wanted to channel authority and fear, the mysterious nature of the SS's mission. I mean, the Totenkopf, or the death head. I mean, this is pretty obvious. I mean, this is just a skull and crossbones. And this was a symbol worn on the uniforms and the caps of the SS. And there was no real good way to interpret skull and crossbones. I mean, it's a pretty terrifying image. But he's intentional about this. Again, this is not by mistake. This is used by him. And a lot of these symbols are ancient Norse runes and, different ancient Germanic symbols that he's tying in, basically perpetuating this idea that, hey, we are the ones that are going to carry on this Aryan ideology. So even the actual logo of the SS, they get these giant lightning bolts. These come directly from Norse mythology. And he believed in these ancient traditions, and that he wanted to symbolically embody the spirit of the Aryan race. And so, again, he's inspired by these Teutonic Knights, and the Teutonics are similar to the Knights Templar that we had mentioned before. They're just a series of crusaders that defended their heritage. That's the way he saw it, at least. And these knights saw themselves on a mission to spread Christianity by, sword. And Himmler basically was like, hey, we're going to twist these ideas to make us appear as some ancient tradition. And so they use these symbols to basically tie in with their racist organizations to perpetuate the idea that they're actually bigger than the ideology, that they're ancient, and that this Aryan philosophy is actually, true, and it's who the Germans actually are. I mean, Hitler himself in Mein Kampf, he writes about the, historic destiny of the Germans to expand its borders to the east, and he held up these Teutonic Knights as the image of courage and honor and patriotism. And even look at the flag of the Teutonic Order and the Nazi flag. I mean, there's a ton of similarities, and it's by no means a mistake that Hitler was reading these ancient texts and reading about these ancient groups and basically drawing inspiration from them for his own Nazi party. So not only the flag, but obviously the most common symbol on all these flags, the swastika, is a significant symbol within the Nazi party. And this blood flag that you see here, this Blutfahne, this is recognized as the red flag with the swastika in the middle. It's the one everyone knows. You know, this guy's an artist. You know, he's good at branding, right? I mean, this thing is pretty iconic. A lot of people know it. The flag originated from the failed beer hall push in 1923, where basically the early Hitler and the Nazi party tried to overthrow the Weimar Republic, and they were unsuccessful. Hitler goes to jail, writes Mein Kampf, da-da-da. And during the confrontation, several Nazi marchers were killed, and their blood gets all over the flag. Therefore, they call it the blood flag. Now, it doesn't end there because, again, Hitler and Heinrich Himmler are so obsessed with the symbolism and the sacrifices made by the early Nazis that they actually consider it like a holy relic. So the original flag then gets used in Nazi ceremonies, and particularly during the annual commemoration of the beer hall push. One of the significant rituals basically involves like consecrating the new flags with the blood of the old flags. And they would literally lay the flags on top of each other and hope that some of the blood would kind of peel off and that all the flags would carry on the blood of the first Nazis that died. I mean, it's an interesting thing because you don't think like, oh, you know, even though they didn't necessarily believe that, oh, the devil was in charge of everything, or they didn't write directly about all these esoteric ideas. Even just doing these practices, these rituals of trying to imbue your new flag with the blood of the old flag is very ritualistic and very esoteric, in my opinion. So again, a lot of this ritualism, I think, comes from Heinrich Himmler. Again, this guy is one of the worst Nazis. I mean, some have argued that he's worse than Hitler himself. He's known as the architect of the Holocaust, not a great title to have, in my opinion. He designed the concentration camps. He's the head of the SS. He helps form the Gestapo. I mean, he's basically just like a loser theater kid who's obsessed with the occult, and he's, you know, trying to figure out the secrets of the universe, and he's like just taking it too far and given untold power, and basically is able to do whatever he wants. And as a result, this is what we get. But they're all like obsessed with these like ancient ideas, and you know, it's basically like they're playing like D&D or something, but it's real life. I mean, it's fucked up. But this guy, Heinrich Himmler, is not only obsessed with the occult, you know, symbolism that he uses on all the uniforms, but also on ancient artifacts. And this is maybe the most interesting part of this entire story, is that Himmler himself is basically setting up task forces to go on these expeditions around the world and try to uncover these ancient artifacts. Here's a couple of them. So Himmler himself requested a search for the evidence of Thor's hammer. Yes. You know Thor's hammer from the fucking movie. Like, he's like, no, the hammer is real and we need it. So literally Himmler is trying to find Thor's hammer, and he has this task force known as the Ahnenerbe. And this is a actual expedition force that's trying to go around the world and find these artifacts. And this is an actual letter that he wrote. He says this: have the following researched. This is so funny. May 1940. Find all the places in the northern Germanic Aryan cultural world where an understanding of the lightning bolt, the thunderbolt, or Thor's hammer, or the flying or thrown hammer exists, in addition to all the sculptures of the god depicted with a small hand axe emitting lightning. Please collect all of the pictorial, scriptural, sculptural, and written mythological evidence of this. I'm convinced that this is not based on natural thunder and lightning, but rather it is an early, highly developed form of war weapon of our forefathers, which was only, of course, possessed by the Aesir, the gods, and that it implies an unheard knowledge of electricity. I mean, like, again, I'm not completely like, oh, there's no way it doesn't exist. I'm one of these guys that's like, yo, maybe it does. I don't know. Does it exist? Maybe. Does it have powers? It's kind of hard to get on board with, but Himmler fully believed it. And it kind of makes me go like, well, what did he know? Right? Like, did he know some shit that we don't, what's going on with that? He was fully convinced and sent out this task force to find Thor's hammer. And based off my research, they never found it. Had they found it, they probably would have won, to be honest with you. They would have bang, right on D-Day, exploded the whole thing. Probably. That's what I would have done. But it doesn't stop there. They're also trying to find an artifact known as the Holy Lance. And not only do they try to find it, they actually get it. So let me explain what the Holy Lance is. This is a thing known in Christian lore for, 2,000 years, basically since the death of Christ. The Holy Lance, aka the Spear of Longinus, or also called the Spear of Destiny, which is just the sickest name. If I'm starting a band, Spear of Destiny, that's so fucking sick. Basically, a lot of people believed that the lance that was used at the crucifixion of Christ, that was put into the side of Christ and water came out, that this was the lance that was passed on for generations and it was taken from the Romans, and that whoever possessed it throughout history basically possessed untold power. Now, the lance was seen through Christian lore at the time to be a symbol of compassion against Christ, that as he's being crucified, the lance was basically a way to kill him quicker, which I guess if you're getting crucified, dying faster is actually better. So it was basically seen as like this compassionate tool, and whoever had the tool basically had the power of the world, I guess. I mean, for example, many different people throughout history actually possessed the lance. For example, the Crusaders believed that the discovery of the Holy Lance brought them a favorable end to the siege of Antioch. And Henry the Fowler believed that when he had the lance, that was the reason that they won the Battle of Riade. And the most famous one is the legend of Charlemagne. This is obviously the Holy Roman Emperor. And he carried the spear with him, as the story goes, through 47 successful battles. And that he died when he accidentally dropped the holy spear into the water. And that's basically the story, is that when he had the lance, he was beating everyone, he was killing everyone, beating everyone up, and then as soon as he dropped it, he died immediately. Now, this is where the story gets interesting. Some people speculate that Hitler originally saw the lance prior to ever, even going to Germany just as a young boy, that the lance was in the House of Treasures in Vienna. This is basically a massive museum, so to speak. Not a great name, kind of literal. And this treasure house held all of the possessions that the Austrians had, and obviously the sacred lance was one of them. Hitler saw it and never forgot it, and apparently he had heard the story that whoever had it would be successful in battle. When the Nazis overtook Vienna, allegedly, as the story goes, Hitler went straight for the House of Treasures and took the spear, and that, again, he believes that it would maybe help him in battle. Now, this is where the story gets even more interesting. Some people speculate that when the Allies actually repossessed all of Germany and the war ended, that it was only when the Allies got in the possession of the sacred spear that Hitler killed himself. Now, some people have sort of balked at this and said this is actually technically not true, that the spear was only allegedly seized in 1946 or 47 after Hitler had died. Look, I don't know. That's just as the story goes. But it doesn't stop there, because Heinrich Himmler was interested not only in ancient artifacts, but also in rewriting history in general. Like I said, he had created this specific task force within the Nazi Party and funded it with the sole purpose of just going around the world, collecting ancient wisdom and trying to basically piece together a new history for the people of Germany to basically validate their Aryan ideas. And for Hitler at the time, he was kind of cooling off on a lot of this occult, woo-woo, mumbo-jumbo. But he saw it as a potential way to control the people, and that by rewriting a lot of history and going around the world and getting different information, that you could basically prove that the Aryans are the true race that come from the north, and that the German people are descendants of them, that everyone else is unclean, which then would further the genocidal ideas that he had. And for Heinrich Himmler, he saw it as a, potentially a quest to further their occult practices, and that they could maybe possess different artifacts that can help them in war. So for Heinrich Himmler, it goes even deeper. Again, he is the one within the Nazi Party that is probably the most obsessed with the occult, and believes in a quote that he says that the old German gods will rise again. So in 1933, Himmler creates what he wants to be a Nordic academy to assist in the instruction of the SS upper ranks. And he basically is assisted by a famous German occultist, and the two of them kind of go around and they find an old sort of decrepit castle called Wewelsburg Castle in Westphalia. And that serves as the base for many SS operations. Now, some people believe that this castle also is the home of occult rituals and practices done by Himmler himself. Now, a part of this is that he renovated a lot of the castle. It's very, HGTV. He kind of goes in, he's like, I'm an SS soldier, I'm a Nazi, and I'm trying to find something just on the water. And he basically finds this spot, and he's like, we need to redo everything. We're going to change the whole interior. Which apparently a lot of these Nazis were, some of them were gay, and they were like closeted and hated themselves. Regardless, this might have been his little gay exploration. So he creates something known as the Grail Room. And he literally has a rock crystal representing the Holy Grail. and he's going to go out and try to find the Holy Grail and bring it back into this Grail room, which was going to possess all these other ancient artifacts that he was going to find: the spear, the Holy Grail, the nails of Christ, any other ancient scripts. I mean, here's, in 1934, Himmler meets this Dutch prehistorian, this guy Herman Wirth. And Wirth is one of the most controversial guys, even in Germany at the time. He's going through like ancient art and is convinced that there are prehistoric Nordic civilizations that can be basically decoded by reading the scripts and the ancient writings and texts of these people. And if they can find them, this is basically, they could, decipher the true wisdom of the Aryan race that then would give them untold power. So therefore, the Nazis, empowered by these sort of occult ideas, went around the world. They literally went to Antarctica. They created this place called New Swabia. And literally, this guy, Alfred Richner, takes this German Navy and they go down there. And the reason for it that most people accept is that they were looking for whale oil, and they were trying to find a way that they could, hunt and kill whales for the production of, different resources that they need, fuel, soap, things that the Germans needed and that they were not, necessarily needing to be reliant on, the Norwegians for the importing of whale oil and things like that. And they were also there potentially as like a route for like stopping enemy ships if they were going to go near Antarctica. And so they were trying to maybe set up a naval base, but this has led to a lot of conspiracy theories. Some people have said that New Swabia is basically the place where the Nazis set up a base camp for communicating either with the Hollow Earth Aryans, or that they were using it as a Nazi UFO camp, and that a lot of people, even after World War II, wrote a ton of books basically saying like, yo, the Nazis were in Antarctica to try to talk to the aliens. I don't know. It seems a little out there. I'd have to see some more information. I mean, there are some things that are actually very interesting about this. Apparently, there's a KGB document, and I'll show it here on the screen. Some people said it's fake, but regardless, it's very interesting. This is a KGB document basically documenting how to enter the Hollow Earth, and it's very specific submarine coordinates and maneuvers of how to enter into the Hollow Earth. Other people have debunked this by saying like, oh, the submarines couldn't handle these maneuvers, that the pressure would be too much. They would need an icebreaker just to get down there to Antarctica with the submarines. But regardless, this document exists, and whether or not it's real or not is up for debate. But it's not up for debate that the Nazis were trying to go to Antarctica. For what reasons? Ostensibly the whaling, but maybe they were trying to get in touch with the Atlanteans. Who knows? The last artifact that we'll talk about in this section specifically is really interesting because it's only discovered in 2001. Basically, this guy, he's in this lake in Bavaria, and he's a diver, and he's swimming around, and all of a sudden he sees this giant gold like bowl sticking up out of the mud, and he goes down and he's brushing it off, and he looks at it and he's like, what the hell is this? And he pulls it out, and it's this giant gold cauldron. And you can see it on the screen here. I mean, they call it the Chemsey cauldron. It's basically just this big golden bowl that has these like Celtic style decorations, and it looks similar to different cauldrons. And when he discovered it, people were like, oh, this must be, probably 2,000 years old, because it matches almost exactly to a different cauldron that is in fact 2,000 years old and was probably used in different Celtic and potentially even Norse rituals. And, who knows exactly what ceremonial practices, who's to say? But he discovers this. And what's interesting is that they're dating it. And the researchers much later, obviously in the 2000s at universities, they're analyzing it. And they discovered that this is actually not a 2,000-year-old cauldron, but it was created in the 1930s. And many people believe that it was actually created by the Nazis. And they've actually traced the Nazi jeweler, the actual ore person that was making the gold for the Nazis. And he had on his actual papers that he had to create this Nazi Celtic cauldron. And at the time, people called it Hitler's bedpan, because they were like, oh yeah, it's fucking some Hitler shit that he was trying to make from back in the day. And there's this suggestion that it was done by Heinrich Himmler, basically maybe to, use being ritual practices, and maybe it was supposed to go in his grill room at his castle, his little, satanic Camelot. Again, it's no one really knows exactly what it was for or why it was created, but it's kind of hard to dispute that the Nazis were literally looking at old Celtic, grails and, cauldrons and recreating them. For what purpose? No one exactly knows. Some people believe that it was, again, used in satanic seances, or that they would put potions in it and they would try to look inside of it to see the future or try to possess some type of unknown knowledge. Who's to say? Regardless, it is interesting that they were so dedicated to just creating, I don't know, these types of artifacts and trying to find these artifacts. And Heinrich Himmler specifically was just all in. He was the one that was like, we need to get all of this stuff. We need to control all of these, ancient, artifacts, because this is going to be our key to victory. Now, Hitler starts getting tired of a lot of the occult stuff. Like I said, he's reading a lot of it growing up and a part of these societies and these little secret meetings, but he gets a little frustrated. So in 1938, he actually says, National Socialism is not a cult movement. It's not a movement for worship. It is exclusively a people's political doctrine based upon racial principles. And its purpose there is no mystic cult, only the care and leadership of the people defined by a common blood relationship. Therefore, we have no room for worship, but only halls for the people, no open spaces for worship, but spaces for assembly and parade. And basically goes on to say that a lot of the occult stuff is annoying and that he's no longer going to be allowing these mystical-minded occult people to, take away from the Nazi party. By this point, he's basically gone on a full-fledged war against a lot of secret societies throughout Germany. I mean, he kicks out the Freemasons, he cracks down on them. A lot of them are rounded up and sent to the camps. Anyone else that's a part of these sort of esoteric societies, like I said, Lanz's magazine that he was publishing, that gets kicked out. And the final straw, and I say final because it's not actually the final, but Hitler gets pissed about this one moment specifically. Basically, Hitler, at this point in the war, this is, into the 40s, he decides to open up a new front against the Soviets, against the USSR. Rudolf Hess, Hitler's highest-ranking deputy, his number one guy, right next to him, he disagrees with the decision. And he was actually right. I mean, fighting a multi-front war for the Germans at the time was ultimately their downfall. And Hess, interestingly, consults with his astrologer, someone that can basically read the stars and try to assess future events from, the way that the celestial bodies line up. And Hess goes to his astrologer and meets with them. And the astrologer agrees and says, hey, this is going to be bad. You need to try to stop this immediately. And Hess is going back and forth, and he's trying to talk to Hitler like, hey, don't do this. Don't go into Russia. This is going to be a problem. And he ultimately decides to fly to England himself to broker a peace deal with Winston Churchill. This eventually goes terribly. There's a crash, and he's captured, and he's ridiculed, and it doesn't go good. And this is a huge scandal at this time in the war, and Hitler is pissed off. And he's basically like, what the heck happened to Hess? Why did he go over there? And a lot of his SS men were basically like, he could talk to this crazy, sorcerer, this witchcraft guy, this occultist. He told him to go over there. What's interesting is that the occultist was right. I don't know. I mean, maybe he got some type of divine inspiration and saw the future and was like, oh, this is going to ultimately be the downfall of the Nazis. Hess maybe just had a good intuition and was compelled. It's not known exactly what happened, but it is pretty clear that Hess had met with his astrologer prior to flying over to try to broker this peace deal. Hitler's pissed about this and, again, ultimately dispels all occultism and is pissed off. At this point, the Freemasons are already out. He's cracking down on everyone else that is into sorcery and the occult, and a lot of them actually get sent into concentration camps. But this doesn't last long. And this is maybe the most fascinating part. I mean, this is just crazy. This is when the Germans literally weaponized the occult. And again, a lot of this is at the behest of Heinrich Himmler. Let me tell you about Operation Oak. By 1943, Mussolini is the leader of fascism in Italy and is in a Axis power with the Germans, and he's captured. Now, this is bad for the Germans because he's one of their allies, so the Germans basically make a plan to liberate him. How did they find him, though? This is very difficult. Now, there's this guy, Dr. Erich Kurlander. He wrote a book called Hitler's Monsters. And in that book, he suggests that Heinrich Himmler was able to work with intelligence and a couple other people, and they're basically able to go into the mountains of northern Italy and liberate Mussolini, and they free him and they get him out. How do they do it? Some people say, oh, it was a little bit of intelligence, and we used, our geolocating, and we had an aircraft guy that went over and saw a base and said we should check out there. But Heinrich Himmler was adamant that they used a group of occultists who used remote viewing to locate him. I know it sounds crazy, but this is what Heinrich Himmler believed. Many of the occultists were actually taken out of concentration camps. So like I said, from the Hess action, a lot of them are put in concentration camps. Some of them are taken out and said, hey, if you have divine powers, if you're able to conjure up information from the stars, if you're able to do it successfully, you will be granted freedom. I mean, most people, once they were in the concentration camps, they did not get out. But yet the Germans were finding these occultists and these sorcerers in the concentration camps, pulling them out, and then giving them tasks to work with the Germans to try to locate enemy targets. And that's not the only time that they did it. The British were not having a great naval history going against the Germans. The Germans were beating them with their U-boats. And then the fortune kind of shifts. The British all of a sudden start attacking U-boats with extreme precision. And this U-boat captain, Hans Roeder, he himself is not only, technically trained in physics, he's a high-ranking German official that's, very well-to-do in science and math and a proper, intelligent guy. He believes that the British are employing basically occult or mystical geolocating abilities, almost like dowsing. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but like sometimes people will walk around on property with like a, piece of like a stick, and it's in the shape of like a Y, and they're able to find water, and they're called like water dowsers. And he basically believes that that's what the British are doing, is that they're on their ships and they're using remote viewing from these occultists to find the German boats. And he comes up with an idea that says, hey, if the British are doing it, we need to do it. So they literally create what's known as the Pendulum Institute. And this is used basically as an appropriate countermeasure against the British. He receives approval from high-ranking German naval intelligence in September of 1942, and Roeder proceeds to recruit like an army of pendulum dowsers, as well as astrologers and clairvoyants and psychics, and he uses them basically to find different British ships. And he would place like a tiny toy or like a tiny battleship on a large map of the Atlantic, and he would put it across the whole table, and he would tell the occultists like, hey, I want you to look at the board and just tell me, where are we? Like, where is the enemy ships? And he would swing this sort of this pendulum around, and it was supposed to indicate the presence of real enemy battleships in that location. I mean, it sounds crazy, and by most experts' estimations, the experiment was a huge failure and didn't produce any meaningful results. And a lot of like the Nazi officials that were involved in this kind of disavowed it much later. Like after the war had ended, some of them either in private journals or even in interviews or privately to people that knew them kind of said, no, this, that stuff was BS. It didn't really work. And they kind of brushed it off. But in their personal diaries at the time, they claimed that it worked amazingly well. And they said that they were able to use remote viewing from these occultists that they were able to find in these concentration camps to basically locate British ships across the Atlantic. What actually happens, we'll never know. But it is an interesting account of basically using occult forces and remote viewing and all this stuff and trying to use it in an actual war scenario. I mean, they didn't just stop there. I mean, there was Operation Werewolf, which again, the Nazis kind of like believed that there was some faction of like Slavs and Jews that were effectively vampires, and they had like vampire type essence, and they would try to, take the blood of people, and they would try to control people by using this sort of like, mystical force, and that the Nazis saw themselves as werewolves, kind of like, a prototypical powerful beast that comes from Germanic lands. And they would literally use these types of terms. And it's not really clear whether or not they believed that they were truly werewolves and that the Slavs were truly vampires, or if it was just purely a metaphor that they were kind of using and passing. Regardless, it's fascinating that they kind of used these terms and sort of believed at least in the spirit of them or the essence of them throughout a very tense war. Now, some people have gone on to say like, oh, Hitler was just possessed. I mean, he was straight up just demonic. From that passage that I read a little bit earlier, when he was reading that tome called Magic, he again highlights and underlines these lines. He says, Satan is the fertilizing, destroying, constructing warrior, and he who does not carry demonic seeds within him will never give birth to a new world. So a lot of people believed like, oh, I mean, this guy is Satan. He is satanic at his core. And a lot of people around the world were like, oh, he embodies the essence of Satan. They're trying to stir up this Antichrist, which is not necessarily one person, but just a force of nature that's going to basically, take over the world. So much so that Pope Pius VII attempted to do an exorcism on him from a distance. Yeah, this is on the record. You can look this up. The Pope at the time was literally trying to do an exorcism on Hitler. Like, I don't know how you do it from distance. I don't know how it works. If an exorcism's like Wi-Fi or some shit. I think it's like Bluetooth. You got to be like close, like you got to be arm's reach, I think. I don't know. I've never seen an exorcism. But Pope Pius tried to do it. He tried to just like bang, like holy water Hitler from, you know, a country away. Needless to say, I mean, maybe it worked. I mean, Hitler killed himself. So maybe it did. Maybe it was true. Maybe it actually worked out. Regardless, whether you think that the Nazis had access to occult superpowers and they were able to, you know, use these powers for, you know, evil, and that they were able to understand the secrets of the universe, and that's how they were so successful, I don't think there's any dispute that the occult ideology and the philosophy of the time went all the way through the German people. I mean, like I said, Rosenberg himself said, like, yeah, these people were enticed by the romance, and that they wanted to see a messiah, some figure come back and liberate us and bring us back into our roots. And the Aryan ideas from the Tool Society through Ariosophy was very, very popular amongst the high brass of the Nazi Party. And there's way more to this and way more detail that I could go into, but I'd recommend you guys do your own research, check it out, let me know what you think. It is an interesting idea. I don't personally think that, I guess, you know, occultism was used by Hitler in any significant way once the war started. I think he was mostly on drugs, to be honest with you. But I do think that the ideas of these sort of Aryan beings from Atlantis really came through and took hold on the consciousness of Hitler and Himmler and many other people, and was definitely used as a propaganda tool to try to convince, you know, these regular German people that they were a part of some supreme race and that they needed to defend that with their lives. So there you have it, folks. That's basically all the research I could find about the legitimate connections between the occult and the Nazis. Let me know what you think. If I missed something, please comment it below. That can be a topic for another video. And if I got anything wrong, let me know. I mean, I'm not a scholar. I'm not a Nazi. I'm just a regular guy, just a regular comedian that's interested in weird shit. Anyway, thank you guys so much. See you next time.